The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on how to speed up the publishing process with Citavi and NVivo. I'm just going to go over some GoToWebinar menu items to help you. So on the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see an orange box with a white arrow. Just click on the white arrow and it'll open up the menu for you. And you'll see that there's an area for questions. So feel free to type in a question at any time. Most likely we won't get to the questions till the end, but that's okay. Just type them in as you think of them. We also included the handout we're showing, the PowerPoint today, so feel free to download that. Everyone is on mute just to help with noise background, and this is being recorded, so you'll get the recording later this week too of the presentation. So with that, I'll go into introductions. So my name's Stacy Penna. I'm the NVivo Community Director here at QSR. My background is I actually used NVivo for my own dissertation a few years back, and I used it also to help me with my literature review, not just my own data analysis. And I've been with QSR for 10 years now, lucky enough to be working with researchers on their qualitative and mixed method studies. And my colleague, Jenny, I'll have her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm the Citavi Marketing Manager at QSR since February, since we were acquired. And before that, I worked for about 10 years for the company that makes Citavi. And my background is in library science. And when I was an intern, I was working with reference management software a lot. And so that's kind of how I segued into the job at Citavi. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jenny. And so first, based on our experience working with researchers trying to publish their work, we know there can be some challenges with that. And so we sort of want to learn from you though also. So we have a few polls, if you don't mind helping us with. So the first poll is, how many articles do you publish a year? So I'm just going to bring that up. And so you should be seeing that. So if you don't mind just picking which one makes the most sense for you, that'd be great. And then I'll share the results with you. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now and then share it so everyone can see it. So Jenny, do you mind reading off the results for that?
Not at all. So the question was, how many journal articles do you publish in a year? And the results we had were one person publishes, 52% publish one journal article a year, 39% 2 to 3 articles a year, 3% 4 to 5 journal articles a year, 3% 6 to 10, and 3% 10 or more. Those people who are doing 10 or more, that's great.
Thank you. And so what we wanted to share too is some of our own research we've done in regards to publications and the Scopus database from 2017 to 2020. And so we looked at all qualitative analysis software and where it's mentioned in publications. And you can see there's definitely a trend across the globe that more people are citing qualitative data analysis software, which to me means also more qualitative articles too. And then you can see the top subject areas there also. So for our second poll is we're curious to find out how many months does it typically take you to publish. So I'm just going to launch that. So if you don't mind helping us answer this question too. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to close it if you want to get your answers in before I close it. And I'll share. And Jenny, if you don't mind telling us the results.
Okay, so 3% said it takes them 1 to 2 months to publish an article, 26% said 3 to 6 months, 26% again said 6 to 9 months, 15% said 9 to 12 months, and 29% said 12 or more months.
Great, thank you for sharing that with us. I just also like to point out that also in the Scopus database, you can find over 15,000 articles that mention NVivo. So a lot of times we get questions, well, how do people use NVivo with their different research methods? So I just wanted to point that out. You can most likely find an article that will help you based on your research method. We also know that working together and collaborating on your publishing and your research is very common. So again, looking at the Scopus data, we found that 93.5% of publications are with collaborators and only 7.5% are with a single author. So that was pretty interesting to us. So this is our last poll, so hang in there. We just want to learn from you. Do you collaborate when you work with writing a journal article? So if you don't mind doing that. All right, just give it a few more seconds and then I'll close it. Great, and then I'll share it.
So 21% said that no, they work alone. 45% said yes with me and another colleague, so a team of 2. 30% said yes with a team of 3 to 5, and only 3% said yes with a team of 5 or more.
Great, thank you very much for helping us with that. And so now Jenny will talk more about Citavi.
Yeah, and Stacy, if you want to just pull up the whole image there, I'll just talk to the whole thing. So a lot of you probably work with some type of reference management software and know a little bit about it. So if you're working with EndNote, Mendeley, RefWorks, any of those kinds of programs, you'll be familiar with the fact that you can bring in items, you can kind of keep them organized in your software, and then when you're ready to cite at the very end of the research process, then you can output those sources that you've used in the citation style that you need. And Citavi is a little bit different than some of the other programs out there in that it helps you throughout the entire publication process. So these steps that you see here in the middle, where you're taking then your full text of your different articles you're using, or web pages, even books, you can then bring out the information that's important to you and save them as quotes, as comments. You can save ideas in Citavi, and you can bring all of that into an outline, which you can then bring over to Word. And so the benefit there is that you can really streamline the writing process, and you have all of that work you've done when you've been taking notes on your sources and kind of thinking about where ideas fit together. You have all of that at your fingertips, and so it's much easier to write, and you can kind of avoid that problem of writer's block as well if you've done some of that pre-work in Citavi. Okay, Stacy, you can go to the next slide. And so here we just have kind of the comparison, and yeah, and Stacy, you can talk about it.
I forgot to unmute myself, so that's why there was a delay. But so Jenny just talked about how you can work with Citavi, and Citavi is really around your secondary sources, and with NVivo, it's more around your primary sources. So it's just showing how through the publishing process, how when you collect sources, we have office integration, where you're organizing You can use in NVivo your data files and your code hierarchy. You can analyze your literature review sources in NVivo, and we have memos and annotations to help you with note taking. There are NVivo collaboration tools to help you with collaborating, and then writing and citing would be exporting your codes and memos into Word, and we'll be showing that how Citavi integrates with that, which is I find very exciting.
And this is just kind of another visualization of how Citavi and NVivo kind of work together and where they overlap a little bit. So just like Stacy said in the last slide, you can think of Citavi as being more for your supporting literature, secondary literature, and then NVivo is where you're doing the analysis of your primary research and doing things like coding, transcription, data visualization. And Citavi helps with all of those steps kind of around that original research. So yeah, anything involving your secondary literature with outlining and also planning of tasks related to your research, and then writing your paper at the end. And where the two programs overlap a little bit is that you can use both for literature reviews and you can use both for taking notes. And we'll look at that a little bit today, where you would use which program for what.
And this is just, so this is in the handout. This is what we're going to be showing you in each of the programs. And we just wanted this as a reference point for you. So if you, just remember what we showed you after the webinar. And so now we're going to show you first Citavi in action, and then I'll show you how NVivo can be, you can work with NVivo and Citavi together. So I'm going to stop the PowerPoint and make Jenny the presenter now. Great, we can see your screen, Jenny.
Okay. This is Citavi. This is what it looks like when you first start it up. And we're going to go right into a new project down here. And you have two different options at the moment. You have either cloud projects or local projects. Cloud projects are saved online, and local projects are saved on your computer. Cloud projects, the benefit is that, you know, if your laptop ever gets stolen, then you have that backup online and can access it even if, you know, something happens to your computer. Cloud projects are also really good if you're working with other people and you want to have a group project. You can also use local projects for small group projects, but then you would have the Citavi project file on a network drive. And yeah, I think right now most of us are still working from home, so the cloud project's probably the better way to go. We, at the moment, are only available for Windows, but we will be able to support Mac and Linux very soon with Citavi Web, which should be coming out, yeah, pretty soon. So we're in the beta test right now. And if you are a Mac user, you can go to our website and try out Citavi Web Beta. And then otherwise, Citavi for Windows can be downloaded under this free download link, and that's just at citavi.com. I'm just going to choose local project for the demo today since I'm not working in a group, and we'll just set that up. So for this demo project, the idea was I'm a researcher and I'm looking at ways that whether people think that they've become more creative during their time at home during the pandemic. And so maybe we can say something like creativity during the pandemic. And we'll click OK. And then the first thing I'll do is bring in some PDFs that I have. And we'll just make this full screen. You can always move these columns around with the little arrow that appears here. And there are a few predefined screen layouts as well that you can choose between. And these can be kind of helpful if you're on a small screen, if you're on your laptop, for example. We'll go into the File menu and then choose Import. And I'm going to bring in that folder of PDF files that I have on my desktop. And here I have a few different options. One that's quite useful is this Rename with Citavi Short title option. That's just going to give your PDFs a more meaningful name. A lot of times you'll download PDF files and they'll just be a string of numbers and letters. And this then will give them names with the author, last name, the year, and title. And so then when you're looking in the folder for those PDFs, you can find them again more easily. And it's important to note with local projects, all of your PDFs stay on your computer. They're just in the Citavi project folder, and you always have access to them. And also with cloud projects, you'll always be able to download your PDFs in case, if you ever do want to switch programs, we don't hold you hostage. You can always get all of your full text out of the program and change if you need to. So right now, Citavi is looking for a unique identifier in the PDF articles, and it's looking for a DOI, PubMed ID, or ArchiveX ID. And when it can find that, then it'll add the information to the project. And usually it's a little bit faster than this. I tested it out earlier and it does seem to be a little bit slow today. So when you test it out yourselves, it should go a little bit faster than that. So I'm going to add those to my project now. And here I can choose if I want to bring in keywords or not. I'll just leave that checked for now. And now we can see our results here. In this case, you can take a look at maybe why that one didn't have a whole lot of information that came in. So for this particular article, this doesn't have one of the identifiers, and so then you don't get as much information coming in. So in these cases, this can happen if you're working with reports, for example, or other gray literature. If you're working with just kind of basic web pages, a lot of times Citavi then can't find the information. In comparison with here, for example, here we have one that somewhere has a DOI, I assume, and Citavi was able to find that. And sometimes it's hard to find them myself, but so this was a case where then Citavi could bring, yeah, you can see it here actually in the DOI name field. So Citavi was able to find the information and populate these fields. And then here as well, you have that. In this case, then we would just have to bring in any information that Citavi couldn't find, and you're in a better position when you check this rather quickly after you found the PDF, because here I don't have any of the information about where this was published. So this would be something I'd probably want to go back and look up that information and the journal and where that came from. So that's just to point out, if you have journal articles published in within the last 20 years in a larger journal, then usually you're going to get pretty good results. And sometimes with things like reports or articles that don't have one of these identifiers, then you might have to do a little additional work. And here I'd probably also want to clean up that record a little bit. That looks a little bit funny. So Citavi probably pulled that then from the properties of the PDF. So here what I could do, because I don't have the full record yet, I can give myself a task and I'll just say find full information for this article. And maybe I want to just get this task done today. So I'll add that there. And then that will appear in the task planner. So what we've been looking at here, this is the reference editor, and this is where you have all of your information on your sources. So this is the part of the program that's most like other reference managers. And then you also have the knowledge and tasks workspaces. And so tasks, we just looked at that. You can create tasks that relate to individual references, but then you can also create project tasks. So I might have a submission deadline for, I don't know, journal draft, and that might be sometime next, we'll say end of the month. So you can have overarching project tasks. Again, you can move these columns around so you can see what you need to. You can change out these columns as well. So for example, if you don't need this locations column, this is just going to be the call numbers for books and libraries, for example. Then you can get rid of that in under the columns button. And you have also this very nice advanced selection for your tasks. So if you're working in a team, one thing that's quite nice is that you can assign tasks to your colleagues, and then they can filter out the tasks that have been assigned to them. They can print a list of their tasks, and you can do the same for any tasks assigned to you. And you can also see the status, because here you can change the status. And some things like this one, it's either done or not done usually. But something here, you might have made some progress on your draft. Then you can change that slider. And this is just a good way to kind of keep on top of some of those different research tasks and just kind of see where you are in your project. You can use these project tasks too to schedule writing sessions, for example. So it's a nice way to stay organized. So when you're working with your literature, you always have kind of this idea of what needs to be done with what. Now I'm going to switch to the knowledge organizer workspace here. And we're going to set up a couple categories. So I'm at the very beginning of this project. I've only just found a few PDFs that I think have information that might be useful. So my category system is going to be pretty rudimentary at this point. But I can already put in the sections I know I'll have to include. And then here I can maybe start even adding some subcategories if I know, for example, I'll definitely be talking about definitions in the lit review. And I already collected some literature that's different studies on boredom and creativity. So something like that, boredom and creativity. And you can get very detailed with this. So you can go even another level down here. Let's see. And if you need to, you can always move these around by drag and drop. If you get the level kind of wrong, let's move that. Whoops. Sometimes it's a little tricky with drag and drop. So there are also these arrows here, and then you can just use those to scoot things into place where they should be. But you can kind of see how this will start developing as you get into the research a bit more and get into the literature, and you can really subdivide things out quite nicely. And this will then help you really structure your writing later on. And of course, you can always change things around because, yeah, when you're working, you'll definitely change how you structure your future paper or journal article or book project, dissertation, whatever it is that you're working on. So we have our category system set up now, and maybe I'd want to bring in all of these articles on boredom and creativity into the appropriate category. So I can do that. So we'll just select all of these, and then I can't really see that, so I'll just move this a little bit, then I see that a bit better. So I can just put those in there with drag and drop. And so now I have those there. If I have anything that is about another country, I think I had one. This one's about Germany, so if I need to add a category, I can do that as well. And then maybe we'll go back to all here. Maybe this one I'd want to add. And you can do it with drag and drop, or you can also always just use this context tab and type in the country. So there's usually a couple of places in Citavi where you can add information. So at the moment, we don't have a whole lot of references in our project, but you can imagine when you have hundreds and hundreds of sources that it's nice to then be able to just click on one of these categories and only see the sources on that particular topic. Okay, so now we've kind of set up our project, and we'll now want to add some additional literature. And there are a few ways you can do that in Citavi. You can, of course, import from databases, and I'll just use PubMed because it's freely accessible. But if you are working with databases through your university, almost all of them will have some way to export. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to find. Sometimes you might have to add sources to a folder first, but in almost all the databases, you can export your sources to Citavi that you found. And let's just do a quick search. Boredom, creativity. And here, let's say that I think this one looks like it might be useful. I can click on this little symbol here, and this will appear if you're working in Firefox, Chrome, or Edge. And what we call this is the Citavi Picker. It just lets you very easily import web content. And so you can either click here, or I can click that, and then up here I'll see also that Citavi found that source, and then I can add it. In some databases, Citavi can bring in the whole list of results from the page at once, and PubMed, unfortunately, you can't do it that way. So you can click on the reference. And now Citavi's imported that, and it's also added the PDF. And I can see that here because there's the little check mark and then the PDF symbol. And so now when I go back to Citavi, I have that information, and we'll just change over now to the reference tab. And then I have all of the different source information that I'll need for citation later on. One thing to keep an eye out for is when you have open access journals like this one, a lot of times they won't use page numbers. So for example, here down at the bottom, it might be a little hard to see on your screens, but there's, instead of page numbers, well, you have your page numbers, then they start at 1, but that's because there's a special article number. So instead of being a journal that has pages 1 through, I don't know, 300 throughout the year, something like that, when you have these, when certain journals are published online, they have what's called an article number. And depending on how the coding is in, and in this case, I think this came in from PubMed, sometimes that ends up in the page range field when you import. So this is something then that we'd want to change, and we'll put that now in the article number field, and then we can change those page numbers. So I think this is a good reminder that reference management software isn't isn't magic. It's only as good as the metadata it pulls in. And even if you're not working with Citavi, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind that it's always very good to double check what's coming in. It's of course very convenient that things come in automatically, but just giving it a quick check over is always really important before you go to write and then to create a bibliography. Because if you have any issues with the information in your project, that'll just go out then into your paper. So no one wants that, and especially not when you're kind of at the end of the writing up phase. And yeah, just better to kind of nip that in the bud from the start. And what you can do to make sure that you do double check everything is you can give yourself a task again. So maybe for, so these three, I know, because I entered the information, that those should be fine. Well, the one I have to look up the information. And this one, then I could give myself a task to double check that, that information. In this case, I've already kind of done that check, but just so you can see how that works. And then, of course, that'll show up here in the task planner. And that would be something that, you know, when you don't really have the feeling that you want to write that day or something, it's one of those tasks you can just kind of quickly do and then feel productive that you've kind of just double checked things look okay. So now we brought in an article, and this is all pretty similar to other programs you might have worked with if you've worked with reference management software. And now we're going to get into what I think is one of the best things in Citavi and most useful. And that's the ability to pick out information from the articles that you're working with and save it into your preliminary outline. So I can make this a little bit bigger. I can use this screen layout, for example, or I can make this full screen mode. And that's, of course, very useful when you're working on a small laptop screen. At the moment, I'm just going to leave it like this because then you can see also this quotations tab over here. And so you would be going along and reading your article. And then when you find something that you think is interesting, you can just highlight that. And maybe this is useful for you for your definition section. So you might say, you might label this then, and you can think of this field here as being kind of a label for that item you've saved. And we'll just say difference between state and trait boredom. If you know you're going to be citing this word for word, you can also already give it the quotation marks you're going to need. And it's just over here. And we support a few different languages there. And then you can already add it to the category that you think you might use this in. So the section of the paper that you might use this piece of information in. And that would be that one there. And then when I'm ready, I can just click OK, and it'll save that. You can, of course, also just highlight anything that you think is interesting, but the highlighter will just stay as kind of an overlay on the PDF. It won't add what we call a knowledge item to this quotations tab. So if you want to quickly read through an article and just pick out information you think is interesting and then go back later on and see what you want to actually save in your project, one thing you can do is just highlight whatever you think is important, and then on a second go through of the article you could add items as a quotation, for example, or add a task. But we'll leave that one for now. And let's see, here maybe I've found a section where it's talking about quarantine. So that might be a spot where I decide to use a different type of knowledge item. And here, for example, maybe I'll say, I'll use the comment type and then just rename this. And then you could enter your comment. I'm not sure why the authors don't discuss factor. Then you could put whatever, whatever it was. So when you're reading the text, then you can kind of interact with it as well and save any questions you have. And these questions then might also change the course of your research or change your research design. So that can be quite handy to work with the comments as well when you're reading. We also have indirect quotations, summaries, and tasks. And the indirect quotations, that's just going to be like when you paraphrase a section of the text in your own words. So then you wouldn't be putting it in quotation marks like here. And summaries, that's usually maybe if you're working with a book in PDF format and you want to create a summary maybe for the whole chapter. And the benefit for that is if it's maybe a seminal text in your field, when you have those summaries, if you think you're going to be citing that again sometime in your career, then you have that summary already and can go back to that. You wouldn't have to necessarily reread the whole chapter again because you've done that work already. Here, I might want to add a keyword. Keywords can be thought of as tags. So they aren't hierarchical like the categories. You can't have like sub keywords and sub keywords. So they're more really just like another access point to the knowledge item. And here I think we'll put this in our, well, actually we'll put this in our China category and then click OK. So just going to add maybe one more here. And here maybe I'd have another comment. So here, may be something about, yeah. Okay. And here then we could add that wherever we think it might be useful. So maybe this is actually something I want to talk about in my introduction. So I'd add that there. And of course, when you're reading, you might think of new ideas as well, and you can add those with this thought button up at the very top, and that's available in any part of the program, so any workspace you're in. And this can be really, anything you want, and it's not tied to a specific reference. So you would just add your idea in there and, any, any information you have. So I'll just put that like that just as an example. And then you can put that into your category. And maybe now I'm thinking about study design. So that would go into methods. And maybe I actually realize, oh, I need a new category here. So then I would add maybe something like survey instruments. Maybe I've thought, okay, I want to definitely do a survey, and I can click OK. The last thing I want to show you with these annotation options is you can create tasks. That can be oh, maybe not the last thing. You can also save images, so I think that's important to show. So for example, I can use this snapshot tool and then just bring in an image quotation. There are keyboard shortcuts for all of these, so you don't always have to just go up here with your mouse. So you can see those keyboard shortcuts when you hover over. So for example, here, that would be a D. So here for this image, I can add a caption, and then that caption would later appear in Word. And when I would insert this into my Word document, I would get the citation, of course, for that image. And let's see, say relationship between, and you probably write that out in that case, low and high trait, creativity. Okay, and if I don't add something to a category, I can always do that later on in the knowledge organizer. So one last thing you can do then is add tasks to your document. And let's say I want to discuss this whole, well, maybe not the whole discussion section, but maybe these first few paragraphs of the discussion section with my colleagues in my team. You can highlight that. And if you need to skip columns, you can hold down the control key while doing the highlight. You'll see this little plus sign that appears, and then you can continue highlighting it there. And now I can give this a task, and you have a few predefined ones. So discuss actually is the one I want. I'll choose that. And then I could assign this to a colleague. And in this case, in the dropdown, it's just me because I'm the only one in this project. But if you're working in a project that you've invited other people to, then you would see their names here. I'll just enter a fake colleague for now and click OK. And the other place where tasks can be quite useful is when you're looking at sources in the bibliography that you might want to hunt down and use in your own research. So for example, here, maybe I've thought, okay, just like these researchers, I want to use a survey, and they use this one here, the multidimensional state boredom scale. So you could highlight that and give yourself the task to obtain that article. And you can use the dropdown, or you can just type in that task. So maybe I'll order this through interlibrary loan. And I might want to make a note for myself. This could be useful in my own study. Look at instrument, or at survey instrument. So that's kind of how you can work with those text annotation tools. It's very handy, and you'll see that a little bit more at the end when we look at how you can then bring everything together in Word. But for the moment, let's say that you've done some of your secondary literature research, but now you're further along in your project, and you've been working with some of your survey information, and so you're working in NVivo, and maybe you also want to, for your literature review section, you might have a lot more references at this point, and you want to look at some of the broad themes and bring out, based on what's in the text, some of those broad themes. Well, that's where NVivo can help you. So Citavi is very good for when you're going through the sources and reading and taking your own notes and doing your own analysis based on what you read. And then NVivo can help you really automate that process a bit and save some time. And so when you're working, when you want to use your references from Citavi and NVivo, it's quite easy to do. You just need to export and then choose what you want to export, and then choose NVivo as the export filter. And we'll just create a text file. And then I'll save that. And you can save a preset so you don't have to go through all of these different steps, and you can just choose it then from the file export menu. But in this case, I'm not going to save a preset, and then that will have exported. And I think I exported it to my PDF file. Yep. So that file will then look like that. And there is where Stacy will take over and show what you can do with your secondary literature. Whoops, in NVivo.
Great, thanks, Jenny. I always learn something new with Citavi. It's fun to watch. So now I just want to show you how Citavi can be worked with NVivo, how it's integrated. So for some of you, you might not be using the latest version yet, or it might be new to you. So I just want to give you a little tour of it. So this was released last March, and you can see the different tabs up here. We do have a navigation panel that's broken up into 3 sections. So the first section is the import section, which helps you bring in your data and files. And then the organize section is all around organizing your coding, your cases, your notes. And then the last section is in regards to exploring your data, so your queries, visuals, and reports. And here, this is your workspace. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring in those articles that Jenny just exported from Citavi. So I want to organize my files and create a new folder called literature. So I keep it separate from my own data. So my own data here, I've collected interviews, so that's my primary data. And now I'm going to bring in more of the secondary data, the literature. Or sources. So to do that, I'm going to go to import and go to bibliography, and you can see Citavi is one of the choices. So I just click on Citavi, and here is the Citavi file that Jenny had exported, and I'm going to bring it in to NVivo. I have this wizard, so I like to do it by name of author and year when the sources come in, and I want to save it to my literature folder that I just created, and I'll import. So you can see here the articles have come in from Citavi. Also, what has come in is the references and the information about the references. So what type of reference, the authors, the date, year of publication, and so on. And this becomes helpful later. I'll show you where we can do some queries to look across what different articles said within different years based on the coding we do. And then also when you bring in the file from Citavi, it also will create memos based on what was in Citavi. So for example, the abstract here, the keywords, and notes you might have written. So I can do a couple things. One is I can go right to the sources and I can start reading through them and coding them in NVivo if I want right away. So just go down here and so here I can see they're talking about many changing boring environment and so on. So if I want, I can go to codes, and because I'm working with the literature, I want to keep it separate from the themes I'm finding in my own data. So I'm going to create a new folder again under codes and call it literature. And then in this case, I can highlight what I want to code. I can drag and drop and put it in here, and I'll call this boring, for example. And now that section has been coded into the code, and you can see I can go right back to the original source to see what was coded there too. So I could do that. I could go through my journal articles and read through them one at a time, but what's nice about NVivo is that it can jumpstart your analysis. So I could go to explore, and one thing I might want to do is do a word frequency just to see what are the words that are in the literature sources. So I'm going to select the folder because I just want to look at my literature here. and I'm going to ask it to show the 100 most frequently used words. I can do exact matches or stem words or synonyms, and I'll run the query. And so it's giving me a list of words and their count. I can also add a word if I wanted to the stop word list here. And then I have visuals, so I can go to the word cloud tab, and this will give me a word cloud showing me the larger the word, the more often it's used in the interview. So that'll pop up in a second. And so I can see here they're talking about creativity. So maybe I want to learn more about what was said in the article. So I can right click on creativity and run a text search right from the word cloud. And showing me that these articles mention creativity. I can click on the references and actually see, what was said about creativity here. And I also have one other visual that I find helpful. So I'm going to click on the word tree tab. And this is showing me the 5 words before or after creativity. I could change that, but I'll keep it for now. And so something that is standing out is trait creativity. So, okay, well, let's see what that's all about. So I can right click right here and run a text search right from the word tree too. And so now I can see the different sources that talk about trait creativity. Now, typically for me, this is not enough information for me to understand the context around it. So I'm going to ask NVivo to broaden the context, and I'll run the query again. And now I get more information around the 2 words. So now NVivo's just done a lot of work for me. So instead of me going through and finding trait creativity on my own in an article, I can ask NVivo to save the results as a code. So I'm going to ask it to put it in my literature code, and I'm going to call it trait creativity. I do recommend that you give your codes descriptions, because you could do a code book later if you do. And that's created this code for me, and if I go into literature, you'll see that here listed with 21 references, which means different parts have been coded. So that's one way to jumpstart your looking across all your different articles. Another way is I could also ask the software to autocode. So I'm just going to select all my articles. I'll go up to Autocode, and NVivo does this in a couple different ways. So one is identifying themes. Another, it will go through and find sentiment analysis within the articles. And then here, using existing coding patterns, if you code about 15% of your articles, NVivo picks up how you're coding and then we'll code the rest. So I'm just going to go to identifying themes, and it's going through my articles here. It's an algorithm looking at noun and noun phrases. And so you can see I have this coding hierarchy based on that. And I'll go next, and I can ask NVivo to code by sentences or paragraphs. It does put in a separate folder, which is helpful because I probably don't want it in my own coding yet. I want to probably pick and choose what I bring in to my own coding. So typically people use the autocoding at the beginning of analysis or looking across their sources. Just gives them a bird's eye view of it. Or at the end, maybe I want to see, did I reach saturation? So here you can see this hierarchical chart showing me the top code and then the subcodes. You can click on the boxes to get to what they're talking about. And then it also gives me a table, so it's showing me the different articles and showing me what's the different themes that it's picked up. And then if I go to Autocoded Themes here, you can see they're listed here under the code. So in this case, I might want to bring creative into my own coding. So I can click on it, copy it. I tend to copy, and I'll bring it under literature and paste it. So now it's part of what I want to write about in regards to my literature review. Just want to show you can use notes in NVivo, so I can create my own memo, which could be helpful to when I want to think about analyzing what I've been coding. I do like to insert a date time stamp just to keep track of my thoughts. And what's nice is I could actually even have the code that I created here right next to the memo. So it helps me go back and forth and look at it and start thinking about the analysis and what I want to write about creativity. I also just want to show you another type of query. So here I'm going to go to Explore and Queries and go to the Cross tab. And I'm going to bring in codes that I did for the literature. So I'm just going pick all these, and I want to look at it based on my references, and in this case I want to look across the year that the references were published. So I'll run the query, and you can see I'm actually going to change it to coding references and then do a heat map. So this can be helpful. Maybe you want to see have this changed over time. So it's sort of interesting. We have a lot here in the year 2020. Is that due to the pandemic, or is there other reasons to it? So it's just a way to look at their sources in a different light. Now I can also click on the chart here and create a chart and export that to put in a report, and so on. So with that, the last thing I want to do, because I want to have Jenny show you, because to me this is really one of the key things with Citavi to help you with your writing process. So I've done the analysis here in NVivo on what I want to write in regards to creative or creativity for my literature review. So I'm going to export this code. Oh wait, open it up first. And so I'm going to export this code to a Word document. And you can see we have a Citavi add-on in the Word document. And so I'm going have Jenny show you how to work with the Word document in Citavi. So I'm just going make her presenter again.
Okay, can you see my screen, Stacy?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, so when you've exported from NVivo, you can link up the document with your Citavi project. And that makes sense, for example, if you need to insert some citations for this literature here. And if you also want to insert any of your notes that you took in Citavi. And one thing that can be quite helpful for that is inserting your category system as an outline in your Word document. Just to maybe give you a little overview here of what you see. This is the Citavi pane, and you have your references here. So if you just need a simple citation, that's where you would go to insert that. And you can change this around too. So if you're someone who doesn't really think you're going to use the category system, you can view by persons, by title, etc. And you also have the knowledge items that you've collected. And then we also have this chapters view. At the moment, this is empty, but what I can do is insert my category system, or I can insert even just a subset of that. And in this case, because maybe I'm just working on my literature review right now, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just insert that. You can insert your headings along with all of the pieces of information you've gathered from your reading. Or you can do that as you're writing, which is the way I tend to prefer, because when you gather all these different bits of information, you might later find that some of your notes you're not going to use, or they're no longer so relevant for what you want to say in your writing. So we'll just do our current category and subcategories. And then here now, this looks a little messy, so let's make that look a little nicer. We're just going to give that some numbered headings, and then we can keep those different chapters a little bit more organized. And now, when I click into a section that has something either in knowledge or references, so for example, this one here, then I see those different references, and I see my quotations or comments or my own ideas. And I can just double click to insert that. And then I have my citation as well, along with the page number. And can close that off with the period there. And then, of course, this will also insert an entry into the bibliography at the end. Right now, this is just the Citavi default style, so we'll change that to a different one. Let's use APA, for example. And you'll notice that this is then going to update how that appears here. And you can, of course, switch between types of styles as well. So now I've changed this to a numerical style, and that's going to change that style here at the end as well. You can, of course, work with Citavi similarly to other reference management programs. You'll be writing, and then you want to insert a reference, or maybe you want to insert a reference with multiple, or you'll refer to multiple sources at once, and then you can just double click to insert them one after another. If I move these around and cut and paste, depending on the style, Citavi will then update those numbers. Let's see here. That looks actually a little strange there. Sometimes you have to be a little careful that you don't miss the field or something. No, that looks better now. I think it might have just taken a second to update. That can sometimes happen. Yeah, so this now, it looks like it should. Everything's in the order that I think this particular style, I'd have to double check. Some of these number styles, they're in the order of insertion, and some are in the order of the author last name. But if we want, we can change this back. Probably most of you are using, I guess, one of these in-text citation styles with the author names. And we have a lot of other styles as well. So you're not limited to those 4 that I have here. There's those are just the ones that I've most recently used, but I can choose from many others, and you can narrow this down a bit too. And when you're looking in Citavi itself for a style, you also have an advanced citation style finder. So if you have something that's from your department and you think, oh, this isn't going to match any already available style, sometimes you can use the citation style finder and then find something very similar, and then it's just a matter of making a change or two in the citation style editor in Citavi. But let's see. Just choose here, for example. You can see then what that looks like and apply it, and Citavi will change things as necessary. And if you need to edit a citation, so for example, maybe this one, I want to make a change, I can do that. If I want to delete something out of here, for example, that's pretty quick to do. If you need to add page numbers, you could do that as well. For whatever reason, it's a little slow to update today. You can always force Citavi to update, either there if it's not pulling in references, or here up on the refresh tab. It's a little bit slow. So I'm guessing when you're trying it out, yeah, I think my whole computer today is a little bit slow, so apologies for that. But you'll then see that that updates as well. And I think maybe for whatever reason, I might have found a bug. This is also our next version that's coming out in May, so could be that there's something I need to tell the developers about. Anyway, when you try it out with the current version, you'll see that it's you can change things as you want, and Citavi updates. One other thing that's quite useful is if you have, for example, an image you want to insert. So let's look at, I think we had that one image quotation. Yeah, and we didn't put that in the category. But let's say we wanted that to be here. You can just double click, you have that image, and then you have the caption you created and the citation here. And of course, you can insert your own ideas as well. This chapter view is very helpful because then you're always just looking at what you need for a particular section. And here we don't have a ton of references, but let's say you've been working on a project for a little bit longer, and I'll just show you quickly our example project that you can also take a look at and use to test Citavi and see how it works. So here, for example, when you've been doing some research and here this project, we have about 81 sources, then you see that quickly you have quite a lot of information, and then being able to keep that really organized in Word when you're writing is a big plus. And so then you're not always having to look at everything you have and go through these long lists of knowledge items and references. You really can stay focused just on what you need for a particular section. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Of course, you can integrate this with what you pull in from NVivo too. So if you need, for example, a formatted reference, you can just double click to insert that. But I think I'll end there since I've gone over time a little bit. And Stacey, I think you had a couple slides at the end to show.
Yes, I'll just quickly go over some slides. I've been trying to answer questions as we went through, and there was one question at the beginning. If you look at the questions, Jenny, that I couldn't answer myself. So while I do this, you want to check that out. So I won't go through all this, but you can see the different types of products that can help you with Citavi and with NVivo, and that's part of the handout. So feel free to look at that. We do want to let you know that you can try Citavi today. So go right here and you can download it. And I believe the trial is per project 100 references. Is that correct, Jenny?
Yeah, so it's up to 100 references. After you get beyond 100 references, the project is read-only, so you can't make any changes anymore. But you could still export from your project to another program, for example.
And just this is information about the community. Love if you haven't already joined to join it. And we do a lot of thought leadership webinars right now. we have a forum where you can go in and talk to other NVivo users, and we're really excited. Yesterday we just announced our NVivo virtual conference will be in September again, and we're having a call for abstracts. So this is a link. If you go right there, it will take you to the web page, and it'll help you learn how to submit your abstract. So we hope you do. The more, the merrier. And that is it for us today. So we just want to thank you very much. And I just want to make sure we get to the one question. I don't know if you saw it. I can read it for you. One was,
Yeah, I
yeah,
saw the one at the beginning. I can show that quick actually, how you would create, how you could use the cloud as a backup after working on the local machine.
okay, hold on. I'll
So if
give you
you,
control.
okay. So the way you could do that then is under File and Copy to Cloud. So you can create a backup there. The one thing to keep in mind though is that it won't be synchronized with your local version. So you really should think of it as kind of a copy as a backup in that case. If you think you will be using cloud projects a lot or would want to use cloud projects a lot, you can also work offline. So if, for example, your internet goes out, as long as you're still logged in to Citavi, then you can continue working and Citavi will save a local file. And once you're connected again with the Citavi cloud, then it's going to synchronize those up. But yeah, if you're working mainly with a local project and just sometimes want to have a copy as a backup in the cloud, it's just file, copy to cloud.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Jenny, on a great presentation of Citavi. And there's a quick survey at the end if you don't mind answering. There's just 2 questions. We'd appreciate it. And thank you very much for your time today. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, thank you, Stacy, and thanks everyone for attending.